To me, the answer is very clear because I haven't done anything really different in the way of preparation. My songwriting comes from the same place through my entire career. My memories of growing up with music is the late 60s into the early 70s. It's sort of that time when that flower power hippie movement, and on every street corner in Copenhagen, some guy was standing there with an acoustic guitar and a flower in his hair, and protesting the Vietnam War and stuff like that. I was, of course, way too early to understand what that really meant. But the sound of the guitar and that simple way of just being able to perform a song in just that way stuck with me, and it's sort of the first thing that I ever did, way before I came into a band. Which basically just meant that during my entire career, all songs that I've written, no exceptions, have all come from the same place, that acoustic guitar in a chair or on the couch. And sort of the only, there's other differences, but the only difference is that on Cobblestone Street, I just stopped it after I'd recorded the guitar and the vocal, and nothing really more came on. When I came into the studio with White Lion and I'd written the song and so, here comes the guitar player and turns it into something big, and the drums, but at the end of the day, the song was still the same with the melody and things like that. It's just that I'd written it from that point of view. Mm-hmm. When the world and the music world is coming out with those big sounds and you feel you want to be a part of that, it's very tough to say, no, I'm going to make a very serious album. Also because at 26, I wasn't very serious. So when I asked myself to come up with the best explanation for it, is that I had to live this long life, which is now 36 years of being in that career, until I could do this kind of album where I would sing about my life in real, and for you to believe that every word that I sing in comes from my heart and is about me and is real. I couldn't do that in 1988, and I couldn't do it in 1998. It is, I mean, in many ways, not just did I sit when the album was done and feel like I basically was sort of watching a movie. Just from the atmosphere, the different things go, that you're following a person through life, from young to man, to growing old, to heartbreak, to sadness, to death, to love and hate, and all war and whatever, and all these different things that makes a man, or you go through a life when you choose to jump out on the endless highway and not live in the safety of working in a bank and the same job for 40 years and security and stuff like that. Already from the age 15, when I left school before my education was over, I took a chance on life, and I've never had any guarantees in my life. And I mean, right now, I don't even have a home. I couldn't tell you really where I live. I hope to see my children. I mean, there's so many things that, from taking that chance at early on in my life, leaving my family and jumping out in the world, after many years I look back and I know I paid a price. But now I'm so involved and committed that this is my life. I was kind of being called home to who I am as the first time being a solo artist, and then saying, what is it I'm going to go do as a solo artist? And the answer is you, not anything else. Be you. Mm-hmm. And where is it that my songwriting is coming from? Because even though I wanted to be like Van Halen, even though I wanted to be like AC/DC or Aerosmith or something like that, it wasn't my roots. My roots were not just Bob Dylan and Neil Young or Donovan or that folk music. It just was that very simplistic form of songwriting and acoustic kind of music. That is my true, honest roots, and it's just too strong in me that, I'm just not Metallica. It's something that I later on discovered. I always had this dream to come to America once I really started understanding what America was. And when I came to America, it's kind of like you came to Disneyland. It was almost artificial. It was unrealistic. And you almost don't get to taste the real world and the problems in the world, because suddenly you're just in the rock and roll outfit, and it's just, you know, it's an illusion. You know, you don't get outside the door to see how the real world is. But bit by bit, songs like When the Children Cry, Little Fighter, Cry for Freedom, El Salvador, started appearing, and I was sort of wondering why it is that when all the other bands that were sort of playing in the 80s, was it Bon Jovi or Poison or Rat or Cinderella or whatever, they were all just singing about, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and driving in your sports car and picking up 16-year-old girls or something like that and having parties. And why was it that I didn't feel that that was me? And then it sort of just later in time really it came to me that I was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I came from a little apartment with my mom raising me and my two brothers, never having a car, never really having money, but really having a complete amount of freedom and a lot of love, but also Denmark being a country that was very much aware of the world. So if it wasn't a school, if it wasn't just the single TV channel, you knew about the world. You didn't just know about the local news. You knew. So from the beginning, you grow up knowing that there is a world and there's a war in that country, and in that country there's a flood and people are dying. When you're in Hollywood, even though I love my 21 years in America and I love the American way, you very easy forget about that there is a real world. It of course has changed later on because there's just war on goddamn every street. But, so it was very easy to sort of fall into that, but there was something knocking on in me from time to time saying, I can't keep writing baby, baby. I want to write something else. I remember at the end of the Beatles, my older brother's a big Beatle fan, and I remembered the crossover when Woodstock and all that came, because that's what was on the turntable, and my mom loved music, and my mom always played Elvis Presley and Dylan and all that kind of stuff. So there was an enormous amount of music in my life, even though we were not a family of music. So it's one of those things that my mom was really working hard as a waitress in a bar, just to make sure that we could have food and clean clothes. And I sometimes look upon many of my other friends who grew up in an average American home, but they had 3 cars and they had their own bedroom and a shower. And I had nothing, but what I had was freedom and love. And because my mom let all the doors open, I never needed to rebel. I couldn't play a role that wasn't me. And I started noticing that I wasn't very good at being the rock star in the limousine behind the sunglasses. I felt uncomfortable. It's nice to get a ride and something like that, but it's just sort of just didn't represent me. And so even though it took time, I was being pulled back to who I was and where I came from. And I mean, the first step was, of course, the different lyrics in White Line, and then the second step became ending White Line, because I sort of was done with sort of the 80s movement and then started Freak of Nature, because now I had this need of playing a rawer form of rock and roll. Even though it was harder, that wasn't necessarily the need. It was more about getting back and working as a band, writing the songs collectively, where in White Line it had been Vito Brahe and myself writing the songs, and which basically is that the sound of Freak of Nature is the sound of a band, and White Line is more sound of a song. And it comes at the right time. I'm very happy that this is not 1988, and I don't appreciate the history what I am, because in '88 I would have been all concerned about how many jackets can I change in the first song, and how's the audience going to look, and are they going to scream when I read. Now it's like I feel that I've been invited into an honorary row of greatness, even though if I'm just a support act, my name is still out on the marquee in Paris. And so it's just kind of like the second book. This is in reality the start of the new chapter. And what a perfect way to do it. Even though if I'm only going to go out there and play 7 songs, just an acoustic guitar, it's still status, because nobody else is doing it. I'm the one doing it. So it's great, and it came at the right time. I was not ready to do this 10 years ago. Yes, I actually had the final show on the tour is in Montreal. But that's not going to be my last show in France. Then later on, we are now working on how to get my Tramp deep into the French territory, because everybody sort of feels that with this album and where I see myself as an artist progress, this is one of those great countries that does appreciate that. Well, I don't consider myself as much as an entertainer as it is really a person. It's something that I decided to do last year after I had done the album. I said to myself, now that I'm here, what would it be like if I just got in my car with my guitar and I just went out and played without any big thing? So through some connections and some emails and stuff like that, within a short time I had booked 42 shows, and I traveled around Europe and I did 30,000 kilometers, and every night I walked up on stage and did a new set list and made it for the first time in my life. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I have about 50 songs that I sort of can pull off. And it kind of became just very, very rewarding in the way that, hey, you're falling back in love with music, where before it was almost more about, trying to make it instead of just letting it happen by itself, which is now what I'm repeating for the rest of this year. And returning also to America for the first time in many, many years. And for the first time, of course, also playing it like that in America. There are a couple that doing there's not just one, but I mean, the songs in my life that stands the test of time have come, on one of my solo albums, which was called More to Life Than This. There is the title track called More to Life Than This, and I'm basically dealing with a lot of different issues in 3 big verses. It's a big song, it's a long song, and it's also a song that most of the fans relate to as almost like the ultimate Mike Tramp song, in the way that this really describes the artist. This is kind of like my Born to Run kind of song. And now we obviously come to Cobblestone Street, and Cobblestone Street, the title track, I think will be also one of those songs, along with maybe Back in White Line, where you maybe go When the Children Cry, or Little Fire, songs that are always with me, songs that I sort of always play, because they are a part of me. They're not just a song, they are a part of me. Oh, exactly, and it's incredible, basically just how simple that basically can say, but how true it is. And it's obviously it's also interesting that it sort of becomes the last song on our final album, and in that way. But I think that sometimes it just that it was knocking on your door, raising the questions about, there's just something that doesn't feel right here. And the music scene was changing. This is '91. Grunge started coming in, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam is sort of just being born, etc., etc. And just everything you were part of, which was called the '80s, I sort of almost looked upon as, no more. It had become too much, and I understand that. I don't feel that I was the one that pushed it over the edge, but I did see that after the original wave of maybe the 5 big bands, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Van Halen, Poison, and let's just say the big few were, then White Lion became part of the second wave. When you ended up on the 12th wave, where every band had been copied 50,000 times, and every band was called White or Black, or Wolf or Lion or whatever, it was a joke. There's no originality in it anymore. It was like Die Hard version of like number 10, and there's nothing of the essence left anymore. And then the people just say, we need an alternative. So it opened the door to the opposite of like, now it has been so polished and so beautiful in many ways, now it's gonna get ugly and rough. And it's just the way nature somehow works. And you can't say, oh man, you know, Kurt Cobain was the one that killed the 80s. No, the 80s killed the 80s. It just became too much. It became a joke. Nobody was doing any serious songs at the end. The songs were just crap at the end. With a smile on my face and my